Whether you are a landlord or tenant in North Carolina, the best way to avoid getting caught up in time-consuming, expensive disputes about leased property is to understand the Tar Heel State's rental laws. We're eForms, the world's largest online database of fillable legal forms. In this video, we'll cover some essential aspects of North Carolina rental laws, including the relationship between state rental laws and lease agreements, specific provisions to be aware of, and what the laws say about eviction. And if you're seeking a lease agreement that complies with North Carolina law, but don't want to spend thousands of dollars on an attorney, click the link at the end of this video to get started with creating one that you can customize for your situation. The first thing to consider is the connection between rental laws and lease agreements. In North Carolina, as in other states, landlords and tenants have the power to determine most of the terms of a lease for themselves. They can set rent, determine when it's due, and establish what specific obligations a landlord or a tenant may have. A written lease agreement signed by both parties could be the first place to turn to whenever there is questions about the property. What kind of leases are there in North Carolina? There are many different possible types of leases, but for residential rentals, the most common is a standard lease agreement. This typically involves a landlord and a tenant, or tenants agreeing to rent a property for 1 year. Once the year ends, it's common for a standard lease to convert into a month-to-month lease, which can be ended with notice from either party. While it's common practice to let the other party know at least 30 days before, North Carolina law requires only 7 days notice to end a month-to-month lease, one of the shortest periods of any state. What else do North Carolina rental laws mandate? When it comes to security deposits, landlords are permitted to charge up to 2 months' rent. Deposits less any amount used for repairs generally must be returned within 30 days. The state also imposes limits on late fees. Landlords cannot begin to collect a late fee until rent is at least 5 days late. If a landlord does impose a late rent fee, it can be no more than $15 or 5% of the monthly rent, whichever is greater. North Carolina's rental laws also influence how evictions are carried out. Eviction is the legal process of removing a tenant for violating the terms of a lease. To get the process started, landlords must provide the tenant with a written document called a notice to quit that informs the tenant of the problem, describes how it can be rectified, and lets the tenant know that if it's not fixed in a certain amount of time, the tenant must leave the property. The most common of these is a 10-day notice. This is used for violations like failing to pay rent. However, if a tenant commits a more serious lease violation like intentionally damaging the property or using the property for criminal activity, then the landlord can issue an immediate notice to quit with no opportunity to fix the problem. Once the tenant has been provided with the notice and the required amount of time passes without appropriate action from the tenant, then the landlord can begin the process by filing a complaint for summary ejection in the court for the county containing the property. Rental laws seem complicated or wordy, but in North Carolina, understanding them can help avoid time-consuming disputes down the road. Be sure to subscribe for more videos about important topics on property law.